Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Grant Ulrich. I'm the Managing Deputy Commissioner in the City of Chicago Department of Buildings. And I'm joined today by Martha Reynoso, who's our Deputy Commissioner who oversees the Express Permit Program.
Morning.
So as we are getting started with our webinar, we have close to 300 people signed up, and it looks like close to 200 already logged in. Today for interaction during the program, we'll be using something called Slido. So you can join at slido.com, enter event number 3248259, passcode Chicago, or if you have a phone or another mobile device, you can use that QR code up on your screen to join. And as you join, you can tell us if you have used the Express Permit Program website yet or not. Helps us know a little bit about our audience as we're getting started, as a few more people are joining. It also lets you log into that site. So we're going to have two questions at the beginning. This is also what we're going to use for the Q&A. So throughout the program, you can put your questions in. You'll be able to see questions from other participants. If you have the same question, you can upload it so we make sure we answer the most popular questions if we don't have time to get to everyone's question. But in our earlier sessions, we've been getting to most questions. So it looks like about half and half so far in terms of people who have used the Express Permit Program. We're going to cover the site from the beginning. So for those who have used it, we'll have a little bit of probably repeat. For those of you who haven't used it yet, it will be a good introduction. If you need a little bit more information, we did do a webinar earlier this week that is up on BACP's YouTube channel. That was an overview. Today's session is this morning's session is going to focus on what architects and design professionals can do using the Express Permit Program. So it looks like that answer is staying about half and half. A little bit more have not used the website yet than have. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through. And as an additional question, just to get a sense, I know today's program is focused towards design professionals, architects, engineers, and those types of users of the system, but it looks like we have a few expediters in our audience. And so we expect, we know expediters help design professionals apply for permits sometimes. We designed the website to be pretty user-friendly, but we know that sometimes you want to work with a licensed expediter. We'll talk a little bit more about when you can apply for a permit on behalf of other people and when you can't and why those licenses are important in Chicago. Looks like we do have one or two contractors joining us today. That's good for you to know when you might need to have a design professional involved in getting an easy permit. It looks like we have a few others. So with that, we'll keep going. As a reminder, use slido.com to submit questions throughout the program. That is what we will primarily be using. So do not put your questions into the Zoom chat or Q&A. Please do focus your questions into the Slido tool. We'll have one more slide to join that later in the program. And with that, we'll get started with our content. The Department of Buildings, we're very glad you're here on behalf of Building Commissioner Marlene Hopkins, myself, and everyone at the Department of Buildings. We really appreciate you joining us today. We have over 200 participants now. The mission of the Department of Buildings is to enhance safety and quality of life for Chicago's residents and visitors. We do that through permitting, inspections, trade licensing, and code enforcement. The department issues between 40 and 50,000 permits in a given year. We conduct hundreds of thousands of building inspections, and we oversee more than 20,000 licensed contractors and other professionals. So that's how we carry out that mission. We're very excited today to be telling you about our Express Permit Program, which is a way that you can get permits hopefully more efficiently and more effectively. Launching the Express Permit Program is very consistent with Mayor Johnson's commitment to cut the tape, which is an initiative he launched last year with an executive order. There are 14 departments, so the Department of Buildings and 13 other city departments have been charged with looking at our internal processes, our bureaucracy, to find ways we can improve the process experience for you as users, for developers, for development in Chicago, both city-supported development and also privately funded development and building projects. So that's an initiative that was launched last fall. This summer, a task force was appointed to oversee that initiative, working with the mayor's office You can learn more about the Cut the Tape initiative at chicago.gov/cutthetape. As a little bit of background to the Express Permit Program, where we were and how we got to the Express Permit Program, this chart shows the breakdown of permits in 2019. So you can see that only about a third of the permits the department issued that year, and this is a typical year, including this year, about a third of the permits we issue are our full plan-based permits, full plan review, whether that's our standard plan review, self-certification, or developer services process used for those permits. And 2/3 of the permits we issue are really some variety of over-the-counter permits, less than a full plan review. Before the pandemic in 2019, many of those were literally over-the-counter, coming and dealing with our staff in room 900 in City Hall. And then in 2020, we, like everyone else, the department buildings, and probably many of you on this phone who work in the industry, were forced to rapidly rethink how we deliver our services. For us, how we deliver building permits, process building permit applications. The Department of Buildings in Chicago benefited from an early investment in electronic plan review for plan-based building permits. We'd been using electronic plan review for our biggest permits, for those ones that required full plan review, since about 2012. But our smaller permits, those over-the-counter permits, we did have to come up with creative ways to deliver those. And we appreciate all of you who worked through that process of the Easy Permit Program, using a partial online application, partial email. Martha and her staff worked really hard to do that and pivot very quickly in March and April of 2020 to that new method. And that gave us some time to look at what we had in the works in terms of new IT systems, what we had in terms of outdated IT systems, and really build a new system from the ground up that would be a better system, not just taking old processes and shoehorning them into a new system, but really rethinking some parts of our system, what was eligible, how it would be eligible, what we would look at as part of the application. And that's how we got to the Express Permit Program. In 2020, we had a system that was in the works. At that time, there was demand for those IT services to look at some emergency programs like expanded outdoor dining. So we took a break, we rethought things, and we came up with the Express Permit Program. Government IT projects take a little bit longer than anyone would like. But in November of 2023, we were very excited to launch the Express Permit Program. So it's been live for almost a year now. And in February 2024, if you are a user of the program, you know that the website got a little bit cleaner. It looks a little bit nicer. It works better on mobile phones if you ever try and use the application portal on a mobile phone. And then just about a week ago, a week and a half ago, we expanded the Express Permit Program with 5 additional types of work being eligible and some other enhancements to our application process. We're continually looking at that, taking feedback. It is also a system used by other departments, so different groups and different types of permits, not building permits, are using that system. So they are constantly improving, investing in that system, and we expect to see that continue to happen as we move additional Department of Building permit types and application types from other city departments into that system in the next few years. We expect that plan-based building permits will probably move in 2026. Some additional permit types, likely demolition, wrecking permits, will move in 2025, and some of our licenses and other processes as we continue this slow and steady IT upgrade. Some key features of the Express Permit Program that we'll highlight today, both in this presentation portion and then in the live demonstration. Individual user accounts. So for architects and engineers, you have an individual user account that's tied to your individual state license. We'll see a little more information on that and how you make sure your license is tied together. Applications in the Express Permit Program are tailored by the type of work that you are doing. We'll also see that and which types of work might have involvement by an architect. Once you select that type of work in the application at the very beginning of the application, then we designed it with simple, we hope, targeted questions that get us the answers we need to make sure that you're using the right type of contractors, you fully describe the scope to us, and then helping us calculate the permit fee at the end of the process, consistent with the municipal code. At the beginning of the process, for any application that is going to be reviewed by city staff, and anything where a design professional is involved is going to stop and be reviewed by city staff before it issues. Some of our smaller permits do issue automatically or are reviewed by the system based on customer input. But the larger permits that we'll be talking about today in the express permit program do all stop for a review. So they will all pay a $25 review fee at the beginning of the process to make sure that, you know, it's not a test application. It's really something that you're ready for city staff to be looking at. Licensed contractor e-acceptance is also something that we are excited that we've rolled out with the express permit program. If you're used to our bigger permits or our older process, you know that our process of sort of confirming that listed contractors on the application was a little unverified. We sometimes got squiggly signatures that were or weren't from someone who was really with the contractor. And so we were excited to roll out licensed contractor e-acceptance, well, which I'll talk more about in a minute, as a better verification that contractors really are on a job before a permit issues, to avoid some of that changing contractors after the fact. The permit certificate looks completely different than our old permit certificate. It has similar information, but we'll see an example of that. And then if you are still involved in a project after the permit issues, so for contractors and architects who are involved in construction administration, others like that, you and the contractors listed on the permit can see inspection results online, which was not something we were able to offer in our old system. On individual user accounts, if you are an architect or a structural engineer who had an account in our old system, in our system for plan-based permits, then you received an email last week or the week before, the week of September 9th, so 2 weeks ago, you would have received an email if you had not set up an account in our new system yet tied to your state license. We sent an email to your email address on file in our old system with a unique link allowing you to set up an account in our new system. For the next 2 years, while we are still in these two systems, if you are using both systems, you will have two separate accounts. You can use different usernames, different passwords. The systems are not tied together other than this invitation that you got, taking the contact information we had from you from our old system and allowing you to set up a license, an account tied to your state license in our new system. Managing your contact information is still going to be done in that old system, which some of you know as Hanson. That will continue to be our system until we fully migrate permits out, again, probably in about 2026 is our current schedule. And emphasizing again, accounts in our system are really for individuals. So individual people with a first name and a last name. We don't create online accounts for companies to share. For our contractors, I emphasized this more with them in our earlier webinars we've done, or earlier this week and last week, that if they are a company, a contractor, they're going to have one employee or an owner who's a company admin, and then they can create individual accounts for additional employees tied to that same company license, as opposed to trying to create one company account that they share. For the audience today, most of you are architects and engineers. Similarly, your state professional license is an individual license. It's going to be linked to an individual account. It's very important that that is your individual account. Do not share it with others. This is your professional license that is on the line. And if you do give out that information, we are going to hold you responsible for anyone else who uses your account, because it really is your individual account. If you have someone else in your that you work with who is applying on permits on your behalf, in most cases, they likely have to be licensed as an expediter. The Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, our host of this webinar today, issues licenses to expediters and expediter companies, and they can provide more information. If you have a third party who's helping you get permits in the city of Chicago, likely they have to have that separate expediter license. Please do not give out your individual account to someone else applying on your behalf. And then we have individuals in our system. We'll see homeowners and business owners can apply on their own. This is unlike our standard plan review or plan-based permit processes, where we do require either the design professional or an expediter to apply. In the express permit program, because these are smaller scale projects, we do allow an individual owner to apply. And in the projects types that we'll be talking about in today's webinar, that individual would upload the drawings they get from a licensed professional that are signed and sealed by a licensed professional. I think in most cases, they'll probably, for those sort of bigger, small projects, want to have you or someone else involved in helping them apply, but the system is set up that a sophisticated owner, whether they're a homeowner or a business owner, can do that application on their own, unlike our process for plan-based permits where we do require the licensed individual to be the applicant. Just to emphasize again, for a licensed individual, a state licensed architect or engineer, they're going to have an individual account that's tied to their individual state license. They should not try and set up an account for their entire firm or anything like that to share in this new system. As we roll plan-based permits into the system in the years ahead, likely we will set up the ability for multiple design professionals who are working together in a firm to link their accounts together. That feature doesn't exist today with express permits, but we are planning for that as a future feature. The important part in the express permit program is going to be selecting the type of work that you are doing on the permit application. So we launched with about 15 types of work last fall, and we added 5 additional types of work this just last week. The types of work are important. They do drive the questions and requirements in the rest of the application. Unlike our guidance on how to use the Easy Permit program, where you could theoretically combine sort of multiple eligible categories of work into one Easy Permit, which was our old program that retired itself last fall when we launched the Express Permit program. In the Express Permit program, if you are doing multiple eligible types of work, it is going to be multiple permits. So if you are working on a single family home, you're doing both interior alterations and you are replacing the roof, whereas in the old process, maybe we would have encouraged you to put that on one permit application. In this process, to keep the application moving to make sure that requirements are enforced correctly, that would be 2 separate permit applications. If you were doing interior work, replacing the roof, and replacing windows and doors, all of those, if you're doing a project where all of those require permits, that would be 3 separate permit applications, 3 separate permits that you get for that work, which is a little bit different. And sometimes at that point, if you are getting those multiple express permits, it may be more effective to get a plan-based permit, may be a lower permit fee, may be easier to convey that work to contractors and others involved in that job. But if you are using the express permit program to do that type of work, it would be 3 different permit applications and 3 different permits. And to highlight, there are quite a few of the types of work in the express permit program now, where at least in some cases, the application will say that a design professional, an architect or an engineer is required. So for our small scale solar projects, which used to be the Solar Express Permit program, an architect is always going to be required. For porch repair and replacement, which is a new type of work that we just rolled into the express permit program last week, if you are doing something other than limited repair, if you're repairing and replacing more than 25% of an existing porch, you are going to need to have a design professional. We're doing a separate webinar this afternoon, I think 3 o'clock today, if you want to come back to learn more about porches. In today's session, we're going to demonstrate the non-structural interior work and the masonry work categories as ones where often there's an opportunity for you as a design professional to maybe take work that you may have been submitting or thinking you have to submit for standard plan review and submit through this express permit process and maybe bypass some steps that would be triggered by full standard plan review. Really important, and I will say this quite a few times in today's presentation, chicago.gov/permit is our online guide to building permits. This was launched last fall, shortly before the rollout of the express permit program. Chicago.gov/permit is our resource that we have spent a fair amount of time putting together for you to explain how to apply. It has instructions, it has documents, so our permit forms and some sample documents in the express permit program. It's a good place for quick links to find all of the Chicago construction codes and the Chicago zoning ordinance, as well as a list of recent amendments to the Chicago construction codes. If there's something very recent that isn't in the compiled codes yet, there is a landing place to get to the right place to start an application. We know our different permit processes as we transition IT systems. It is confusing sometimes to figure out which type of permit to start where. So please go to chicago.gov/permit, go to the apply section, and that will take you to the right login page or the right explanation of the process of how to start a permit. There's the check status feature, so you can check on the status of a pending permit application. That's something that we enhanced last fall. We continue to work on enhancing. Commissioner Hopkins is a big iPhone user. Our IT department is sometimes a little Windows-based. There were some bugs with how it pulled the project doc status report on iPhones, and we're happy to announce that those were fixed by the city's IT team last week. So the check permit status is an important feature both for express permits and also for our plan-based permits. And then Get Help. The Get Help section has answers to frequently asked questions, and we're regularly adding additional answers to additional questions that we get in that section. So if there's one section of chicago.gov/permit that's the most important, most helpful for you to go to, especially when using the express permit program, I would say it's the instructions section. So if you go to chicago.gov/permit, navigate to the instruction section, scroll down a little bit. For the express permit program, there are 26 sets of instructions for different types of work or different types of permits that you might need to get. You can click on each of these and it will take you to a detailed page with quite a bit of information about what is expected to get a permit for that type of work. As you can see, chicago.gov/permit is mobile friendly. It does look pretty good on a cell phone, also on a desktop. And in the instruction section for each of those types of work, there's going to be an overview, there's going to be an eligibility summary, there's going to be some important considerations. Some types have more important considerations than other. For everything, there's going to be a before you apply checklist, so some key data points that you might want to have, the property address. Some applications you're going to need to have the property index number or PIN, a list of required documents in the express permit program as part of the application in the portal. You may be asked to upload documents. So the express permit program is not going to, other than for fire alarms and stormwater management, is not going to use our project doc system. It is going to just have the attachments, including architectural engineering drawings, uploaded right in the online application, which means that if we have comments about them, we are not going to be able to do the same markups, but these are smaller projects, more straightforward. So we have switched to this less complex system for handling the review of those documents. For projects, it's going to identify more information about if it requires a contractor, what types of contractors are required. It's going to talk about when a design professional is required, what type. And then for people who really want to get into details, at the bottom of each of these pages, there's a section identifying some specific sections of the Chicago construction codes and other parts of the municipal code or rules that might be relevant to that type of work. Again, chicago.gov/permit. If you go to the apply section, you can see over on the right side of the screen, you can scroll down on that page, apply for a building permit without plans. As we're going to be talking about today, express permits sometimes are without plans, sometimes do require plans. If you are doing a bigger small project in the express permit program, that's a change. So you can go to chicago.gov/permit, apply, click on that link, and that is going to take you to the login page for the Chicago Inspections Permitting and Licensing Portal, which is where both the express permit program lives and programs for other city departments, and where we'll be moving more of our permit processes, more of our application processes for the Department of Buildings over the next 2 years. The web portal is available 24/7. It became much more mobile friendly with the upgrade that they did to the look and feel of that website in February of this year. There's an online dashboard that we'll see where you can see both pending permit applications and issued permits. You're going to see the real-time status of your permit applications, and also you can see the real-time status of inspections after a permit is issued. You can make online payments, both credit card and e-check through that site. And this is used by multiple city departments. So we continue to make enhancements if you provide feedback to us, but there's a lot of stakeholders who influence this website. So we expect to see continued improvements to that web experience. Two more things before we get to our demonstration. I mentioned already contractor e-acceptance. We think this is a really great thing that we've seen improvements on for our express permits since they've been live last fall. We hope you appreciate it as well. If an online permit application is submitted by an employee of the licensed contractor, this step doesn't apply. But if someone else is applying, if you as a design professional are applying, if an expediter is applying, and they're listing ABC Electrical on the permit application, before the permit will issue, after it's been checked, but before it will move ahead to add a fee or issue, it's going to send an email to ABC Electrical at the official email address they have on file with their contractor license. And in that email, it's going to give them a link. They don't need to create an account or log in, but they can. But they don't need to create an account, or they're going to have that link in their email. And there's going to be two buttons at the top, accept or reject, and they're going to be able to see all the rest of the details of that application just the same as you see as the applicant. Hopefully they all click accept and they do it quickly. If they do that, the application will move forward. If any contractor clicks reject, it's going to send the application back to whoever applied for it. It's going to let them know they can edit it again, but to resubmit it, they're going to pay another $25 review fee. So it is important to get the contractors right, because the contractors are going to be notified. They are going to have to accept or reject before the permit will move ahead to add a fee and be able to be issued. And the permit certificate looks quite different than our old permit certificate. You can see the permit number is much bigger. It now starts with a B. As we migrate our old records into the system, a B will get added to them. We just migrated over 100,000 old electrical permits from our old system into the new system as part of the change we just did last week. And we expect the same thing will happen when we move plan-based permits in the future. But for now, the permit number is very large. You can validate that permit is valid on the city's website, data.chicago.gov, or other places on the website where you can check on the status of the building permit. You can see some additional information about the scope of the permit. We now list all of the contractors, some additional information about inspections and terms and conditions that apply to the permit. So we think that this has been an improvement. It's no longer on the special blue paper. But it is something that you can print multiple copies of, and no longer are inspectors writing on the back of these permits. Inspectors are putting their results into the online system so that everyone can see those results on the online portal. As a reminder, today we're going to be using Slido.com as our feedback tool, so not the Q&A feature in Zoom, but please use Slido.com. You can join at Slido.com, event 3248259, passcode Chicago, or if you have a mobile phone and you want to join with that, you can use the QR code on your screen. You can join that now, put in questions, see other users' questions, upvote them as we're going through the live demonstration, and then following the live demonstration, we will get to as many of your questions as we can. As important resources, chicago.gov/buildings. That's our main Department of Building site, chicago.gov/permit. I think you've heard me say that enough times. I'll say it again. Chicago.gov/permit is our online guide to permits. That's a really important resource. And if on those two websites, you cannot find the information that you need, you cannot find the answer that you need, you can email expresspermits@cityofchicago.org for help. That's monitored by Martha and her team. As we are rolling out this new process, our volume of email inquiries and our time to get to them is a little higher than usual, but we will try and get to your inquiry if you send it through expresspermits@cityofchicago.org. Please provide as much detail as you can in your request. If you have looked at a web page and it doesn't provide your answer, referring to what you've already looked at is going to help, because many times staff are going to send you back to a web page web link to provide a consistent answer, because we have tried to put as many frequent answers to frequent questions on the Guide to Permits website at chicago.gov/permit. And now moving ahead into the live demonstration, I'm going to switch my camera off. I'm going to be looking at a different screen, and we're going to pull up the website. So this is what the Guide to Building Permits website looks like. This is chicago.gov/permit. As I mentioned, there's a welcome from the mayor and our commissioner. And the instruction section is going to be that important section to learn more about the types of work that you can do using the Express Permit program. For those of you who also do plan-based building permits, hopefully you've found before our section down here. But if you are doing plan-based building permits and need to navigate that process, it is further down the page with how to start an application, walking you through the portal for that process, and also suggestions on how to write the description of work, which is important to do in the plan-based building permit process. In the Express Permit program, we'll see the system generates your description of work based on the questions that you answer. The other things we'll highlight, the document section has some forms. Some of the types of work in the Express Permit program do require forms. Most of them do not. And then there's some sample documents. If there is a attachment that it asks for, we tried to provide some samples. We'll be continuing to add to the site. Codes is a shortcut to all of our Chicago construction codes. And if there are recent amendments, you can click here at the top to see a summary. Apply is going to be that place we'll go to in just a minute. Back to the instructions, we're going to be doing a demonstration of masonry work and interior non-structural alterations today. Just to highlight, if we click on masonry work, there's a very short summary up at the top. The important thing is going to be the eligibility and non-eligibility section. So little green check marks for things you can do, little red X's for things that you cannot do. And you can see over here, there are certain things you can do only with drawings prepared by an Illinois licensed architect or structural engineer. So if you are replacing a lintel with a span over 6 feet, not exceeding 25 feet, or you're doing concrete repair that is over the limit for without an architect, which is 100 feet. So if you are doing 101 up to 5,000 square feet of concrete repair, that can be done only with an Illinois licensed architect or structural engineer and drawings prepared by them in the Express Permit program. You can also see there's a link down here. Certain types of masonry work, minor masonry work do not require a permit. So we want to highlight those small things. If you do go ahead and apply for a permit, you are attesting that you do need or want one. And we cannot give a refund if you decide later that it was a small enough job that it did not require a permit at all. And then there are terms and conditions that apply to all of the types of work in the Express Permit program. There's this checklist down here of some things you might want to gather before you start the online application. There's going to be the highlight of those required documents that are going to be needed so you can prepare before you start the application. But for the most part, at least if you have basic information, after you start an online application, you can save it and come back to it later. So as I said, we understand we have a couple of different websites for different permit types as we migrate our processes between our old system and our new one. So chicago.gov/permit and click on apply is going to take you to these links where you can get to the right place to start each type of application. So top part is our plan-based permits. These largely take you to our old portal or the online request site for assisted developer services projects. If you scroll down a little bit, Express Permit program is going to link you to our new portal, the new shared site. I would click on this, but today we're going to be using our test demonstration site. So it would take you to a page that looks very much like this, except it should not say this is our test website at the top. It would, but otherwise look very much like this page. So once you get to this page, you're going to log in with your account. If you are an architect or a structural engineer, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you would have received an email either when we launched last fall and you created an account, or if you had not yet created an account, you received an email the week of September 9th, giving you a unique link to create an account that is linked to your email that you use in our old system and linked to your state architect or structural engineer license. So I'm going to log in with a test account for a test architect. And we will see what that looks like. When you log into the system, after you log in, you will arrive on a page that is called the dashboard. It's going to show you all of your permit applications and also issued permits. You can use the search feature and the sort feature to filter this list. If you do have a search on, it will save. So if you search for a keyword, it's going to filter your list until you clear that out. That is something that some people have some challenges with the dashboard, and they're working on making that more obvious. But we can see this account has two applications that are, one is in application review, one is still at intake. We're going to go and start a new application. So to start a new application, you're going to go up to the permits, drop down in the top menu, and select apply for permit. That is going to take you to a page that lists all of the types of permits, both for the Department of Buildings and all of the other departments that use this system that you can apply for. The test site is a little bit slower than our production site. You can see DOB Express Permit Program that we're going to be talking about today is the first one in the list. There are some permits issued by the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. There's some permits issued by the Chicago Department of Transportation and other choices on this page. But we're lucky that the DOB Express Permit Program is the very first choice. So we're going to click Let's Get Started to move on to the beginning of the application. As I previewed, the most important thing is going to be selecting that type of work. That's going to drive everything else in the application. And once you move forward past this page, you're not going to go back and change that. You can change almost everything else, but changing the type of work after you start, you'd have to start all over at the beginning. So we're going to be demonstrating two things today if we have time, which I think we will. So we're going to be doing masonry, and we're also going to be non-structural interior work. We're going to start with non-structural interior work. We're going to see over here, any field that has an asterisk is going to be a required field. So, and it tells us that up here. For this type of application, estimated cost is a required field. So we're going to put in that estimated cost. If you click on this little information or hover over this little information icon, it's going to tell you to include the estimated cost of both materials and labor. For project name, you can see it does not have an asterisk. This is going to be for you primarily to see in your dashboard. So if you have a client number, a file number, if you have lots of applications, you can put in the address, you can put in a description. I am going to put in a description of what we're going to be demonstrating today. As we go ahead, before you keep going much farther, it is going to remind you again that there are some types of work that don't require a permit. You can click on a summary. That's going to take you back to the guide to permits to see what types of work do not require a building permit. By continuing with the application, you're acknowledging that either a building permit is required or you're voluntarily seeking a building permit. If it's something small that does not require a permit, you can get a voluntary permit, and fees paid in connection with the building permit application are going to be non-refundable. So you have to accept that. And then there's some general terms and conditions about using our permit process. And once you accept those things, you can keep going with the application. The next step is going to be putting in the address. For demonstration today, we're going to be doing some interior remodeling work in a showroom in the Merchandise Mart, a fictitious showroom in the Merchandise Mart. But the Merchandise Mart is a real building, and we're going to put in the real address for the building. You don't have to put in the full address. You can see it's going to start filling in street names for you. If you don't know the end, it's going to suggest the correct address. For smaller properties, you can use the Cook County Assessor website to look up the PIN number if you don't know it. For something larger, like many of our downtown properties, they might have complicated property address relationships, something like the Merchandise Mart. I would work with your client to get that information from them before you start the application if you are doing work in a larger property. But for smaller properties, single family homes, definitely, most smaller residential buildings, you can use this assessor website to convert an address into a PIN if you want, but it is a requirement of state law that we ask for the PIN as part of the permit application. Here, I know the PIN number for the Merchandise Mart, so I'm going to put it in. The online application is going to let you keep going, even if you don't know the right PIN, but it's going to stop later and it's going to make your application go slower, because if your PIN and the address don't match, a city staff person is going to have to look at it and correct that for you. So it's going to slow down your application if you put in incorrect PIN or a made up PIN here. And just like many online shopping sites, the website is going to suggest an address that is an official address based on what you put in. So here we're going to confirm that it is 222 West Merchandise Smart Plaza, which is the address. At this next step, you're going to enter the property owner or tenant. You don't want to click add me. This is Hester Architect. He's not the owner of the Merchandise Mart, but we're going to go in here and put in Merchandise Mart property. This is the owner of the Merchandise Mart. This is again information that you'd want to get from your client if you are a design professional applying for a permit on their behalf. It's going to let you search. You're going to say that they're the property owner. We're going to come down here. We're going to select Merchandise Mart properties. If you are searching for someone who's not already in our system, there is a button down at the bottom of that sort of lookup page that says add new contact, and you could create a new contact if they are not already in our system, or if their contact information has changed, their phone number or their email address. So here we put in Merchandise Mart properties. If your client is the tenant, if they are applying, you could put in the tenant name here. That will be the main name on the building permit. But if you list the tenant as the applicant, we are still going to require you to put the name of the property owner in later at the additional applicant step. So you're always going to need to know who the property owner is. You can have a tenant listed on the permit application, but you cannot skip the idea of providing us with information about the property owner. The one nice thing, if you are familiar with plan-based permits, the express permit program per the municipal code is not subject to revenue or debt checks. So these applications do not go to the Department of Finance. They are not stopped for revenue or debt checks. So if you have a small enough scope of work that needs to go through that, that is one step that the express permit can skip past. Continuing on, all applications for work need to provide an emergency contact. So here I'm just going to put in my information as the emergency contact. This is someone who should be an emergency contact, assuming the permit is issued during the scope of work that is being performed. You can see that you need to always put in a phone number that is required. It's optional to provide an email address and optional to provide additional information. It's also optional to provide additional emergency contacts. You always have to provide at least one primary emergency contact. And I apparently have to put in my phone number correctly. It will validate those things as part of the application. So continuing on, it's going to know that for interior non-structural work, you're not doing that on a vacant lot. You're not doing that on, over, or below the public way. And then it's going to ask you some basic questions about the building. These three questions are the only things you have to answer about the building overall where you are doing work. You can say, see, it says in this section, describe the entire main principal building at the address. So the Merchandise Mart is a 25-story building, and it has no residential units in it, and it has over 250 non-residential units. So we're going to be able to put in 250. Please be precise as possible in filling out this information. For non-residential units, if you don't know the exact number, please come as close as you possibly can to providing that information. For residential units, it is potentially important how many residential units are in the building. And then the next section is going to start asking you about the specific area of that building or property where you are performing work under the permit. So now it is going to be specific to the part of the property or building where you are doing work. So we are going to be doing work in a showroom in the Merchandise Mart. We're going to say that that's a mercantile occupancy. We can add that occupancy group. If we were doing work on multiple occupancies, we could continue to add additional occupancy groups. For the express permit program, likely you're not going to be able to do mixed occupancy for most of the work types. We're not going to be working on any residential units. We're going to be working on one non-residential unit. We're not going to be working on any interior common areas. We're going to be working on a single story in the building. We're not going to be working on an accessory building. You can see this is an interior work, so it's already defaulted exterior work question to no. On some other types of work, you'd have to answer this question about exterior work. We have to ask if it's required to address fire damage. Here, we're going to say no. And here in the specific location of work, we can put in the specific location. So we can say it's the Acme showroom suite 456. I believe on this type of application, it's going to take this information and put it on the permit, but it's certainly available to the inspector. This is important for us to know exactly where in something, especially a building as large as the Merchandise Mart, where exactly you are doing the work. It's going to ask you if this is part of a condominium association. We're going to say no. It's going to ask you if it's government funded, which might trigger some additional requirements later in the application. And we're going to say no to that as well. As we keep going with the application, the next step is going to be asking you specifics about the type of work that you are doing. So that first page was sort of general. You're going to see that on almost every type of work that you apply for in the Express Permit Program. This is now going to be specific to non-structural interior work. And within non-structural interior work, there are 3 sub-work types. So you can do non-structural interior alteration. You can do non-structural preparatory demolition. If you have a pending standard plan review application, you have uploaded drawings to Project Docs, you can get a preparatory demolition while that is under review, especially if you're something that's going to be taking a little bit longer, if there's a longer zoning review timeline. If you have drawings uploaded and under review in standard plan review, you are eligible to apply for a preparatory demolition. Just quickly, we'll see that. So that would trigger some additional questions down here, including what is that pending building permit application number? We're not going to be demonstrating that today. We're going to be demonstrating an alteration. But that I just want to highlight that as a choice. And then if you are doing removal of unpermitted residential unit features, sometimes called deconversion of an illegally built unit, that is also a choice. That doesn't require a design professional, so we won't be highlighting that one today. But for alteration, in most cases, it is going to trigger a design professional for commercial work. There are some residential non-structural alterations in a single unit that can be done just with contractor drawings. So it is going to ask us for the gross square footage of the area of work. If we go back to the instructions for the eligible and not eligible for this type of work, if we go to interior alteration, non-structural interior work, we can see that this is not work within a single residential unit. This is work within a single non-residential unit. We can see that's always going to require drawings prepared by an Illinois licensed or structural engineer. And it's going to be allowed up to 2,000 square feet in a non-group A occupancy. So in a mercantile occupancy, we can do up to 2,000 square feet. Here, for testing purposes, we're going to be doing 1,630 square feet. And then we can put in a description of exactly what we're doing. In the Acme showroom, we're going to be replacing 3 demonstration kitchens in Acme showroom. Then it's going to ask you some additional details about exactly what you're doing. Are you repairing, replacing, or removing electrical work on existing circuits? We'll say yes. Are you adding any new electrical circuits? We'll say yes, we'll add 6. And we're not adding a new electrical service, which could be up to 400 amps on this application. We are going to be doing some plumbing work, so yes and yes. And then in the mechanical work, we're going to say no to all of these. There's no HVAC work and there's no gas piping for these demonstration kitchens in the Acme showroom. And then it's going to ask you if you are removing, relocating walls or doors for rooms other than closets. If you say yes on residential, that is going to trigger an architect. If you say no on residential, it may allow, if other criteria are met, that can be done without an architect. On commercial, we saw from the eligibility chart that commercial, whether you're doing this or not, is going to require a design professional. So here we're going to say yes. And are we doing new or rearranged interior stairs? That's not eligible for the Express Permit Program. So we're going to say no. If we had said yes, it's going to just stop the application right here and not allow it to move forward. Some parts of the application are designed to enforce the eligibility rules, and we'll just stop the application from moving forward. So please do start with the instructions in the guide to permit. review the eligible and not eligible before you promise a client that you can get them an express permit. Please do review the eligible, not eligible page under the instructions before you get surprised and have started an application. So here we can see now the next step is identifying additional applicants. This is primarily going to be contractors. I'm going to go through, because we said there was electrical work, there is construction work, and there's plumbing work. We're going to have to provide all three of these contractors. If there had not been electrical work, there would be no asterisk up here, and you would not have to provide an electrical contractor. But here we said all of that. So I have some made up electrical licenses. I think all of our real licenses are also in this system. So, but I think that this is the made up electrical contractor. We can see that they have a license. Please, because of e-acceptance, it's important that you put in the real contractor that you're using. So you can search by either their license number or their name. If it's someone who has a generic name like Electrical Testing Company, you may want to get their license number because there may be multiple licensed contractors with similar names. For our test general contractor, I think the cute name that our testing people design for the test general contractor is Tests Are Us. So there's only one with a name like that in the system. We will select them. And then continuing on, we're going to add a plumbing contractor. We did not have a test plumbing contractor, so I think this is a real plumbing contractor, but they had a name that sounded like testing. So they are in the system. We will select them. So this is our test system. It won't notify anyone of anything. It is important, if you are using our real system, to make sure you have the right information, because if you add real contractors to a permit you are playing around with, they potentially are going to start getting emails related to that if you are playing in our live system. So you can see here, this is an Architect test account. I was playing this morning in our test site. The Add Me button was causing an error. So I'm going to go in here and add the Architect tester. This way, we're going to be able to, well, or maybe it's tester architect. So we can see tester architect here has this fake state license in our testing system. In your account, the Add Me button should be working. If it's not working today, we'll have our people who support the site look into that. I'm not sure if it's working in the production site or not. So now we have added tester architect, whose account this is, to this application. And we can see professional engineer and other construction subcontractor don't have asterisks, so they are not required. Continuing on to the next step. This is now going to be the step where we are able to upload documents. We can see in this yellow box up here that there's 3 types of documents the system is expecting based on the answers that we provided earlier. We need drawings prepared by an Illinois licensed design professional. We need an energy and water efficiency compliance form that has some sign-offs about compliance with the Energy Transformation Code, and at least 1 existing condition photograph. This is important for us to understand what the existing condition of the space is, both for reviewing the permit application, and it's helpful for our inspectors also on smaller jobs, especially work in existing buildings, to understand what the condition was before the permitted work began. So I have some test attachments that I'm going to use today for demonstrating this. We do look at these attachments as part of your application. If you upload something like a demonstration document like I'm uploading, we'd expect you to get a correction back that the attachment that you uploaded was not legible, was not the right thing. So please do be careful with that, but just for demonstration purposes. And you can see now I've uploaded an existing condition photograph. That's no longer listed up here. If we go back, we could upload another additional existing condition photograph, or we can continue with the other types of attachments that are required for this application. This is going to allow you to upload PDF files and also image files, JPEG or PNG image files as the attachments. And then the last thing that we need to do is that energy and water efficiency compliance form. That is a form that you would find at chicago.gov/permit. You can fill it out. It's a PDF form and upload the completed version. If you forget that and you are on this page, there is a link up here to take you to the forms and documents section of the guide to permits. You would go to forms for the express permit program and find a blank version of that energy and water efficiency certification form. So back to our application, we have now met all the requirements, so the yellow box has disappeared, and we're going to be able to keep going. We're now at the last step before we can submit the application. We have to certify that everything we provided in the application to this point is complete and correct. And so if we accept that statement, it's going to let us continue. If you are an architect and you have not linked your account to your state license, there may be an additional message at the certification step saying that you can only apply on a permit on behalf of another person if you meet the requirements for being an applicant's representative. That is, a relative, a full-time employee of a business, or a owner in a condo association. If you are getting that REP message and you have started the process to link your account to your license, you can keep going. We do audit those. If people falsely claim to be allowed to apply as an applicant's representative and they really require a license, we are going to follow up with you if you have a lot of applications, and you may need to be licensed as an expediter, or get your state license as an architect correctly linked to your account. So after that certification, it's going to go to the review fee stage. I'm going to not demonstrate the next steps here. I'm going to start another application type. We may come back to this application and see what it looks like once you've added the fee and once a review is resulted, if it gets corrections. But I'm going to go back now. I'm going to start another application to show you what a masonry application looks like. We're going to do that fairly quickly, and then we will get to about 20 minutes of questions. So we have about 10 more minutes of demonstration. We're going to go to apply for a permit. We can see that test interior alteration showroom is in our dashboard. Now we can get started with a new type of application. Here we're going to see the masonry application. We're going to put in an estimated cost of $11,000. You can see, again, for masonry, it's required. For something like administrative change, changing contractor, obviously there is not an estimated cost required for that. But for masonry, there is $11,000. We're going to do an emergency masonry repair example. We're going to, again, accept these terms and conditions at the beginning. And this time we're going to do work at Wells High School, which is at 936 North Ashland. Here for the PIN number, because school properties aren't taxed, the assessor site is not going to necessarily be the best for finding the PIN number. This is probably something you would have to get from your client, Chicago Public Schools. I looked this up this morning, and I think as a demonstration, we'll see that the system doesn't like the one that I necessarily even looked up. So sometimes for these larger properties, especially non-tax properties, a staff person is always going to have to validate that in the back office. It's not going to tell you that or stop your application here, but we'll see that after we submit it. That is going to be an issue. So here, Chicago Public Schools owns the Chicago Public High School. We're going to find Chicago Public Schools. There's probably going to be several entries. This one seems to have a phone number. This one also seems to have a phone number. We're going to use the top one. We're going to say that they're the property owner. We're going to select them. We're doing work over time to clean up some of those big customers, so they only have one record, but some of the historical information in this system goes back. So if you add a contact and the information looks wrong, you can go back and remove them and find another or create a new contact if the phone number or address has changed for your client, the property owner, or the property owner. Next is going to be an emergency contact again. Again, I'm going to put in my name and typing is important. Similarly, we can't do masonry work on a vacant lot or over the public way on an express permit. Wells High School is a 4-story building. It has no residential units, and it is a single tenant, so one non-residential unit. We're going to add occupancy groups. We're going to say that this is education. And we can say 0 residential units worked on. This is masonry work, so it's outside the building. We could put in 1 non-residential unit, or we can put in 0. We are going to say we are working on at least 1 story. So we're working on 1 story. This is not an accessory building. This is exterior work. This is not required to address fire damage. And we're going to be northeast corner, first floor is our specific location where we are doing some emergency masonry repairs. Is this a condo association? No. This is a project owned by a government entity. So we're going to say yes. Then it's going to ask, is work being performed by employees of the government entity? No, a contractor is doing this work. So we're going to say no to that. Continuing with the application, now it's going to take us to the specific questions about masonry work. It's going to ask us the area of tuck pointing or unit masonry repair. We're going to do 240 square feet. Once we are doing some tuck pointing or unit masonry repair, we can also do lintels. We're going to be doing 3 lintels, and we're going to say that the longest lintel is 7 feet. Lintels under 6 feet can be done without an architect, but once you go 6 feet or over, I think it's 6 feet or over, not over 6 feet, it is going to trigger a requirement that we have a design professional, an architect, or a structural engineer do some calculations to make sure that lintel is correctly sized for replacement lintel. So here we're going to say 7 feet, which is going to trigger that. We can leave the rest of this blank. We could maybe combine it if there was additional work, but this is the entire scope of work is unit masonry, and we can leave the rest of this blank. We can see there are no asterisks down here requiring any additional information. So continue on to the next step. This is now going to ask us for a contractor. I don't have a test contractor, so I'm going to find Foley and Andrews Masonry Restoration as a real contractor that CPS sometimes uses. We're going to find them here. We can see there's Foley and Andrews LLC and Foley and Andrews Masonry Restoration. Again, it's important to make sure you put in the right one. And you can see the top choices have valid masonry licenses. There's some other records down here that don't have valid licenses. So if you want your application to keep moving forward, you want to select one that has a valid license of the type that you're listing them for. As I said, for you, if you are correctly set up, it will have an add me button and it should work. In the test account, that's not working this morning. So I am going to, again, add the tester architect, the person whose account this is, by looking up their name. Now we have added them, we can see there's an option to add a general contractor, but there's no asterisk, so that is not required for this application. Continuing on, we are going to get to our next step, which is uploading the documents. Here, again, it's going to require drawings prepared by that licensed professional. It's going to require an existing condition photograph. And here, because we said that this was government work and it potentially is entitled to a fee waiver, there's going to be an additional attachment that's going to be supporting that. So that requirement to upload that document was triggered by the answer to the question we gave earlier in the application. If we went back and changed our answer to that question and say this wasn't government owned, that requirement for uploading that document would go away. But this is a CPS owned building that we are doing for our example. So we will upload a government ownership or funding letter. And you can see there's some other types of documents you can upload that are not required. You know, we will look at anything that you upload, but you do have to upload the categories that it says are required in this yellow box. Once you upload all of the things that the system thinks are required for this application, the yellow box will disappear. So now we have met all of those requirements. We can go on to the certification. We can agree that everything is complete and correct in the application. If we wanted to, we could also save this for later if we needed to go verify something. But once you get to the certification step, you can only accept it or go back to the previous step. So here, they're going to accept the certification, submit this application. The system is going to add that $25 review fee. And once we pay that, the application will be submitted to the city for its review. Here, actually, because it is CPS, it is going to not add a review fee. If you lied and said it was government work and it was not government work, you did not upload the right attachment, your application would be rejected later. So please don't use that as a trick to not pay the review fee, because we will add the review fee if we do catch you doing that. I think at this point, Martha, maybe we will switch to questions because we do have about 20 minutes left. That sound good?
Yeah, we're ready. We have a few really good questions. One of the first questions we had that was actually voted pretty high. Can an express permit be used to clear the violations? And I guess the answer to this will really depend on the violation. Whether or not it's eligible for an express permit. Hypothetically, let's say it was an addition to a home, that would be a scope of work that's not eligible for an express permit. But hypothetically, let's say we're replacing a one-story front porch, definitely something that would be eligible for an express permit. So the goal of express permits is for these non-structural repairs projects to be processed a little faster than standard plan review, and be hopefully easier, whether it be for the homeowner, the contractor, and or the design professional who's applying for the permit. Next question. If I'm an architect working for two different companies, can I have two separate accounts?
The answer to that is no. So you have one state architect license and you can have one account in our system tied to that one state license. What you can do potentially is be associated with those two companies if you need to list those companies. Usually a combination of sort of architect companies and architect licenses isn't needed. That's a feature I think I mentioned we'll be designing in the future. That's an interesting situation that we'll have to take into account as we're working on that. But right now, you can only have one architect account per state architect license.
So just to throw this out there, if hypothetically you are an architect, but you're also like you have the talent of being able to be a contractor, the express permit program would require you to have two separate email addresses. Unfortunately, I can't. If I'm a plumber, I'm a mason, I'm an electrician, and I'm an architect, I cannot just have one account.
Yeah, that is true. Part of that is due to some of our licenses still being maintained in our older system. So we do need, if you are Martha Architect and Martha General Contractor, you would need to have two different email addresses and potentially two different accounts to be those different roles in our system today. We understand that's a limitation of our system.
Because multiple permits are required for one project, do the drawings need to be specific to each permit, or can we reference the permit numbers on the drawings? My recommendation on this, we are actually saying this a little bit, and it gets you have to remember we're very, unfortunately and fortunately, it's very work type specific. So if you're showing me a kitchen, but you're pulling a, I don't know, masonry permit to replace lintels, I'm going to be very confused. Because within the application itself, there's really no space for you to also say, oh, this will also be for application number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my suggestion, let's keep it simple. Again, the more you give me, the more I might question, the more confused I might get. So again, if it's masonry, let's stick to masonry drawings. If it's a window, let's just stick to a drawing of a window. If you need multiple
I
permits
think
for
this is the
different,
same question from a different questioner.
although I have an account in the system, I did not receive an email linking the express permit. What's required to link the account? So I'm not so this will depend. First and foremost, let's check our junk folder and our spam folder. Maybe at some point you accidentally put us in there, and now you will find our emails in those folders. Hopefully not. Hopefully we're in your preferred folder. But let's say that did happen. My suggestion would be to search for our email by looking up do not reply at cityofchicago.org. Maybe you did create an account, maybe it wasn't tied to your license. Shoot us an email at expresspermits@cityofchicago.org, and we can look into it and then just tie your account to your specific license.
Yeah, and it's do-not-reply@cityofchicago.org. If you watch the recording of this, you can go back and see there was a screenshot of that email. If you are looking, do-not-reply@cityofchicago.org. It does sort of look like junk. Unfortunately, it's an older system that generates those emails, so they're sort of in that typewriter font. They're not formatted, and it comes from that strange email address. But that's a system feature that we asked if they could change, and they said no. So
it may look like a junk email, but it's not. If the scope of work requires stamped drawings from a design professional, can the owner still apply for the permit? Absolutely. If the homeowner, assuming this is a home and it's owner occupied, the homeowner can apply for their own permit, assuming the design professional is sharing those drawings with them. Can a residential deconversion with no interior structural work use this program now? I don't see anything regarding this other than work in more than 1 floor and 2 units, which is confusing because if you convert, the work is 1 unit or 2 units.
yeah, it does say in the ineligibility that you cannot change the number, you cannot increase or decrease the number of units. The only time you can do that is the removing unpermitted unit features. So you can, it is an express permit to remove an illegally built unit, but you cannot remove or add a legal unit under this program. That is going to require full plans. It is going to require zoning review.
What are the limits to design for stormwater management under Express, and why is an engineer not required for this work?
Yeah, so stormwater management is just filing the stormwater management plan. It is going to be in advance of your sort of full building permit. Stormwater management is not authorizing any construction. This used to be done totally outside of any system with sort of payments at cashiers. So this is a new process for filing that. We're not going to cover that in detail today. It does always require an Illinois licensed professional engineer.
If multiple express permits are required based on the scope of the project, is this still a faster process than a standard plan review? This is a big question, because if there are, okay, so the first question is, why are there multiple express permits required? So first, I'm going to point out, let's make sure we actually do need permits for our scope of work. Again, another hypothetical, if this is a single family home and the scope of work includes replacing existing windows and or doors in their existing openings, that is a scope of work that would not require a permit. If the scope of work also includes repairing my single story porch that has a landing size of 25 square feet and has a height of 3 feet from grade, that is a scope of work that does not require a permit. So I really encourage you to take a look at when a permit is not required, because you'd be surprised, there's a lot. You don't need a permit for cosmetic work to refinish your floors or replace your trim. It's not a scope of work that would require a permit. Shingle roofs, we see a lot of roofing permits. And unfortunately, a lot of roof replacements don't require a permit, and we still see them. One of the questions we had on Tuesday's webinar was, why are people still applying for a permit if they're not required? Chances are they don't know it's not required. You don't know what you don't know. And the other thing is that the building code has changed over time. What you did 20 years ago is not what we do today. So that's the other thing to take a look at. So I really invite and encourage everyone to just scan these pages of when a permit is not required. And it's less work for you. And it's you make your customer happy in the sense of no permits required, and they'll probably come back because you were honest with them.
I think the one thing to highlight there is that if a building is in a landmark district or is a Chicago landmark, those permit exceptions don't apply, especially for exterior items. So while most single family homes don't need a permit for replacing a pitched roof or recovering a pitched roof or replacing windows, if you are in a landmark district, that does not apply. The nice thing about express permits in landmark districts, you are going to pay that $25 review fee at the beginning. But if you are in a landmark district, if the historic preservation staff approve that permit application, the system is going to automatically waive the remainder of the permit fees. So that's going to be a $25 permit for window replacement for roofing work in a landmark. A permit is required there, but it is going to be a nice, inexpensive permit compared to that permit for a non-landmark building where you are paying the full permit fee.
Next question, what's the average processing time for issuance of a permit that requires plan submission? So right now, and I'll be completely honest, right now it is taking us a little longer. We are a small team. We try to answer the phone, and we also try to answer your questions at Express Permits, and we're also processing your permits. Which is why we try to encourage you to take a look at their website and try to learn. But for the most part, assuming it does require a review from a few of us, it could take up to 5 business days. My expectation, once things normalize a little bit, I hope that we're back to 1 to 2 business days.
And just to emphasize, Martha, that's for, if there's something incomplete, that's 1 to 2 business days to get it back to you if we need something, if something is missing, so ultimately the overall time to get your permit is based on how complete and correct it is. So please do use the instructions in the online guide to building permits, chicago.gov/permit, to check what we are looking for. We try and describe it there. We try and describe it in the application. Please do read things, and that is going to maximize the chances that you do get approval on our first look at your application, not we are missing this or we need more information about this as a correction back. Definitely.
The more you give us on that specific scope of work, the better of a review we can complete and hopefully issue right away. Can an express permit be used to change owner's name and or contractors, actually? So I don't know if you remember, one of the very first work type applications that Grant showed us is the administrative change. I know everyone refers to it as a change of contractor, but that's exactly what it is. It's one and the same. So through this application or work type, you can change the owner, you can change all of your contractors. You can do an alternative code approval. What else can you do, Grant?
If you get directed by staff, if you made some administrative mistake in the description on the original permit, we can issue an express permit to say, the original permit said it was a 4-story building, but it's really a 3-story building. If there's something we need to correct there, that's a rare usage. I think the primary administrative change is going to be add or change contractors. So if you go to the instruction section at chicago.gov/permit, add or change contractor alphabetically is the first one that appears. change owner is next. So you can read more about those in the instructions.
Next question, approximately how long is an express permit? I'll assume you mean from when it's issued. An express permit, assuming it requires inspections, you have 365 days to complete the work and or request your inspections. If after that time frame you are not able to request your inspections, the permit will move into what we would call a suspended milestone. At which point it will very likely incur a fee to extend it, which will be about 25% of the original cost of the permit, and give you another, what is it, 120 days?
180 days.
Thank you. How can we confirm that when answering the email that I received, I have correctly linked my account? If when you log in and you click on, I believe it says my company and do not see
No,
your.
for architects, it's
I'm
not
sorry,
that way.
speaking contractors.
So, for an architect, if you get to that point in the application where it says the additional applicants, where it's asking you to add a registered design professional, if you are correctly linked to your architect or structural engineer license, there will be that add me button. The button that was not working when I in the test site this morning, so I did not use it. If you do not have that add me button, it is not recognizing that you are a registered design professional, so you are not linked to your account. If that button is not working for you, we're aware of that and we'll be looking into that. But that button would not appear at all if you are not correctly linked.
If each of the proposed work type qualifies individually, electrical, fire alarm, mechanical, etc., for an express permit, is it acceptable to obtain multiple express permits that would cover the entire scope of the proposed? I personally would not. Given that you're looking that it qualifies to use absolutely everything, I'm geared towards telling you it may not qualify just because it is doing everything. It's probably best you submit through standard plan review, especially if we're replacing it. And the other thing is, we do have the interior work application, which will allow you to perform up to 2,000 square feet of work. You can include electrical, you can include plumbing, you can include mechanical. Again, it's all interior work. And then let's say hypothetically, you also had some masonry work, then you can go ahead and apply for a separate masonry permit. But if you're using almost every single application that we have within our platform, I'm going to say this is probably a red flag and say it's probably more geared towards standard plan review, and it may be over 2,000 square feet. Can this be used for demo prior to the construction permit? So this is a question that's actually really popular for us and among this group. We have where is it? Preparatory on the right. Preparatory demolition, non-structural interior work. If you take a look at this page, it'll tell you when it is not eligible. So first and foremost, we want the, at minimum, proposed project to be in project docs undergoing standard plan review, at minimum. So what does this mean? This does mean what it doesn't mean is that you can't apply for the preparatory demo without having that building permit number having been started. So if there are no drawings, and we do check, we check for drawings, we look to see if the project has any drawings and verify the permit number that it does work and that it's still active. So if the permit became dormant, that would not, you would no longer be eligible for that demo permit.
And just the other thing to highlight, so on this page or in the Get Help section, we do have a page that explains sort of some minimal exploratory demolition that can be done. Sometimes we're told that to decide the scope of the project, you need to do some exploratory demolition. That does not mean gut the whole space and then decide what you're doing. But the limits of what you can do as exploratory demolition with no permit at all is explained on this page that you can get to, either in the Get Help section or linked from that preparatory demolition instructions page.
And I'm gonna scan really quick through these questions because we still have quite a few and I don't think we're gonna get through them in the next 3 minutes. So one question that I saw a few times, but I removed, was regarding reinstatements of permits. Reinstatements of permits of an existing renovation permit, do not go through the express permit program. You would have to reach out to us individually, specifying the permit number and address. Email us at expresspermits@cityofchicago.org. Issues with e-acceptance, where hypothetically your contractor didn't realize they have, their spouse's name as the company email address because maybe the spouse pays the bills, or gets all the emails. Well, remember, we have e-acceptance, so that permit is going to be waiting for the contractor to acknowledge that they in fact are the contractor on this permit. So making that change has to go through continental testing. Continental testing can be reached at 800-359-1313. Anyone interested in obtaining a general contractor's license because you're doing HVAC work would also require a license now. Yes, it is true. If you are looking to do mechanical work and be added as a contractor on an express permit, you will be required to have a general contractor's license.
And that is going to be true by the end of the year, likely for all permits. That is something that we've been moving towards for a number of years. There were sort of courtesy licenses given to people who wanted to be listed as subcontractors doing mechanical work. In reviewing the code, we are moving away from that and wanting to have a license that we can tie them to if they do substandard work, so we can have something that we can, hold them accountable under. The top one is about non-structural interior alterations and doing some plumbing work. So it was determined that you can add 5 water supply fixture units of demand, which is 1 residential bathroom group, maybe a sink. It's pretty minimal in terms of what falls under 5 water supply fixture units under the plumbing code. You can do that without evaluating the need for a new water service. Above that, you're going to be in standard plan review, and as part of that application, you're going to be looking at new water service. Obviously, as a design professional, you want to look at sort of both code requirements and usability. So if you know that your client already has low water pressure, adding more water demand may not be appropriate, but often those water demands in a single family home in a small occupancy, are not simultaneous. So in consultation with our plumbing group and looking at the code, the 5 water supply fixture units was the limit we came up with that could be done through this express process. Our building inspector notes accessible for us online. Yes, that's something that we're excited is now available for express permits and for electrical only permits that got migrated into the system. And we're excited as we move more permit types into the system that will be allowed. For the contact information, after you have reviewed chicago.gov/building, chicago.gov/permit, then you can email expresspermits@cityofchicago.org. For calculating the areas. So if you've been using the program since it rolled out last fall, we did have an explanation of areas that we did get a fair number of questions about. For residential, we are still allowing you to draw a continuous line around different areas of work. And yes, correctly, you can have no thickness in that connecting space if you draw a continuous line around those spaces. Because we had people abusing it primarily in non-residential occupancies, those instructions and requirements have been changed recently. For non-residential work, you do have to draw a rectangular boundary around all the work you're doing. So if you are doing work in non-contiguous parts of a larger floor plate, unfortunately, that may have been eligible under the creative boundary drawing that we allowed when we rolled this program out. We did see abuses of that, so we did have to tighten that up for non-residential. For work within a single residential unit, though, you can be, as long as you're meeting that requirement and drawing a continuous boundary, it is all of those areas, and there is no area in the connecting connecting strips between different areas within a single residential unit. So for people who are doing HVAC work and want to be responsible for the permit inspections for that work as subcontractors, the city of Chicago does not have separate licenses like we do for electrical, plumbing, masonry work. For those, there were sort of courtesy refrigeration and ventilation licenses issued for years. We are moving away from that practice to be listed as what's called an other construction subcontractor on the express permit program, either as a doing original work or as a change of contractor. They do have to be licensed as a general contractor, and then they can be listed either with their general contractor's license or as a subcontractor. That gives us, it protects the consumer by ensuring that contractor has minimal insurance requirements met. And it allows us as a department, if we do have someone who is not doing good work, to suspend that license and take other measures to protect consumers, which we don't have when we're just issuing courtesy licenses to anyone who says, I want a ventilation or refrigeration license. So Martha, maybe this as a last question. We are over time.
Sure, I'll make it quick. So regarding the files that are acceptable, you're able to upload a JPEG, the JPG, not the JPEG, and a PNG and a PDF are the only acceptable files at this time. And with that, thank you.
Stella, if you want to wrap us up. So on behalf of the Department of Buildings and the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be posted on BACP's YouTube channel, probably sometime early next week. So please check back. Thank you for joining us. If you are not subscribed to the Department of Buildings email list, you can go to chicago.gov/buildings. And there's a link to sign up for email reminders to be alerted of future events.
And one more quick note, we have the porch. If you're interested in the porch webinar, that's at 3 o'clock and can find the registration link on our website.
To learn more about upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/BACP webinar. Again, that's chicago.gov/BACP webinar. To join our entrepreneur certificate program, please visit chicago.gov/certificate program. Thank you.